Hey, g'day everybody, Jacko here from Music Nation TV. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. I want to do a couple of videos over the next week or so, kind of going over how Reaper is such a fantastic DAW for composers, especially the type of composing I do. I do musical theatre, but I think if you did anything, film composition, TV, anything you like, right? It's such a great option as opposed to the other DAWs out there, and I have them all in here because I get access to all these other DAWs. So I've got Cubase, and I've got Samplitude, and Ableton Live, and Bitwig and Reason, all these kind of, and they're all fantastic for their own things. But when it comes down to pure songwriting, I find Reaper is not only the fastest and the most stable, but it has the most flexibility because there's so much built into it that you can get your teeth stuck into if you want to. You don't have to. It's I can understand from a new user point of view, a new user opening this up, it looks fairly simple, but then you start getting into the weeds and it can get very complicated very quickly. It's that type of DAW because it's like it's a modular based system and it's an open structure, so anything you can dream up you can do. It's got scripting and all sorts of really in-depth kind of action commands and things like that. You can go crazy with it, right? But I want to talk about a couple of kind of basic features which all DAWs have, but how Reaper does particularly well, and that is, you'll notice here on my screen, this is my default layout. I have two obvious things and one not so obvious thing. So up here we've got this little box up here which is a notes section, right? Underneath it is the track manager, and down the bottom here you'll see these kind of icons which I've designed these, right? I've kind of stolen this idea of Reason. I really love the way how Reason sets out its plugins. So basically any one of these things here I can click in, it will install, you know, say Contact directly into a track, right? It's just a macro. But it's very hard to see, but down here in the corner there's these two little tabs, right? So this is how I switch between icon view and mixer view. Now I very rarely use the mixer inside Reaper. Like, I don't like to do any mixing. I do all my mixing offline here in my digital mixer. So having a mixer here is only just for visual. I don't really ever use it. But if you're wondering what the mixer looks like, this is where it is. So it's just like a little afterthought, but it's here if I do need it, right? Most of the time I leave this icon view open because I'm more often wanting to put plugins in. So yeah, so let's kind of have I've got some music running here. This is a little track and I'm working on. Quite a nice kind of orchestral piece. So the most obvious thing you'll see here is that I have the orchestra open here, and I don't know if it's easy to tell or not, but this is, if I just kind of minimize this, you'll see that this is a folder. Well, the funny thing about Reaper is that a track doesn't care what's in it. It doesn't care if it's a bus or a folder or a MIDI track or an audio track or a video track. It doesn't care. You can have all of them in one track. MIDI, audio, video, the whole works. It doesn't care. It just sees it as a lane. So you define what you want the lane to look like. So in this case here, I've defined this lane here, which I've called orchestral, as a bus. And you'll see underneath them are these children tracks. They're called child tracks. Okay, so they all feed into this bus. So I don't want to get too deep into this because it gets really complicated really quickly, but you'll notice all of the audio that comes from these tracks ends up coming out of this main bus, which then goes out to my mixing desk actually as a bus send. But you'll notice that there's a lot of other instruments playing, which you can't see here because they're hidden by the track manager. So this is the track manager here. Now I have the track manager and the text manager, notes manager, beg your pardon. I'm trying to think of the right words for these things. So the notes manager is up here and the track manager is here. They are docked in here. So ordinarily they float on top of the DAW, right? You can move them around, but I like them having docked over here so it's permanent, and it kind of gives it a little bit of structure too, because it's, even though you can only see these columns, you can actually have hundreds of columns, so you can like look at everything about the track. I just want to see the main things, right? So if you look at this, this is not unique to Reaper. Lots of DAWs have a track manager, but the way it works in Reaper is really, really nice. What you'll see here is a listing of every single track in my current project that I'm working on, right? But if you look over here, you can only see the orchestral tracks, right? That's because it's anything enabled. So if you look closely over here, you'll see orchestral, and I've got violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, and strings, right? That's these ones here, and you'll see these little dots. That indicates that they're active, and we follow this column up, and it says TCP. That's track control panel, and the MCP is the mixer control panel. So if we look at the mixer again, you'll see it's got everything's up. It's all loaded, right? That's because there's a dot in every single section, right? But if I kind of undot these things here, and I'll just undot all these things here, you can just do it by swipe. You can see now we only have just the orchestral, so it mirrors what's happening up here. So it's quite a neat little system. You can have less showing on your arrangement screen or your sequencer and more showing the mixer or whatever. You just want to, for instance, just monitor the violins, right? Oops, wrong ones, these ones here. So I want to monitor just the violin here inside the mixer. So you can set up a custom view basically of your project, which is pretty cool if you use the mixer. Like I said, I very, very rarely do, but that's what this means. TCP track and MCP is mixer, so you can have defined mixer. So you'll see, as I said, I've just had the orchestra thing, but if I bring up everything, you can click on the top one and swipe down. It's real easy, so I just click here and just swipe down, right? And this is going to bring in the entire project now. You'll see everything has a dot, and you'll see if I scroll here, this has got all the tracks. And Reaper has some really nice little custom commands. For instance, this one here, mini tracks, makes everything as small as possible so I can see it all. I've got zoom to the entire project, so it makes it all fit in the screen if possible. So this is my entire project, right? But I don't really need to see all of this stuff. So I just want to work on the bass guitar, right? I can just get rid of everything else. And there's just the bass guitar that I'm working on. Right, so it's a really, really cool system. Like I said, it's not unique to Reaper, it just works very, very well in Reaper. So we have some other little things we can see here. We've got the track number, the color, so you can change the color of the track here, which is quite nice. You might be thinking, whoop-de-doo, but it's because you kind of get used to, instead of doing it over here in your arrangement screen, I usually use over here for doing most of my kind of broad sweep edits like that. So as an example, let's bring it all back in again. You'll see that you have these little plus and negatives here. That allows you to shrink the groups, right? So we can see that orchestra group here. If I click the little negative here, that collapses it down. You can't see any of the tracks. If I collapse down everything that's inside a group, all of a sudden my project gets very, very small. It's only showing the group tracks. It's all there. It's just hidden. So it's just a really nice way of being able to, you know, set up the way you like to work. Like I kind of, my brain goes a bit doolally if I see too much stuff happening. I'm not a stuff happening kind of, I just want just one thing, whatever I'm focused on, right? And then I can really, really work. So this really is really, really nice for me. I can just kind of bring in exactly what I want to kind of see. What I don't want to see gets hidden, and you can kind of zoom everything up nicely like this. You can zoom in and out, and it's cool, you know. So that's the track control manager. Now inside the MIDI, there's a secondary one called the MIDI control manager. Let me just kind of open up a MIDI track here. I have my MIDI sequencer off on my second monitor down here, so I'll just drag this up, and it's going to be a bit. Oh no, it looks okay. It's when it scales, because it's a different scale monitor, right? It usually goes a bit funny. But anyway, so here is a typical MIDI arrangement. Now I want to draw your attention to this section over here. So this is the MIDI track control manager, and it's effectively the same. The difference is it's only showing stuff that has actually been selected. So I selected, you'll see it says orchestra, right? And we've got violin 1, violin 2, which is I think you obviously know what that is. I'll just kind of shrink that a bit. So that's the stuff over here, right? So you can solo the track, you can mute the track, etc. It's slightly different from the track manager in that we are now looking at the MIDI notes, and I'm sorry for the colors that I'm using here. I know it's a bit hard to kind of define. It's because I don't want to set up a special color code just for doing videos, right? So you have to live with the way I see it. So it's black on black, sorry, but you can see here, so we've got violin 1s, which we've currently got selected. Okay, now if I select violin 2s, we now go to violin 2s, right? As you might expect, and cello, etc, etc, right? And you'll notice that the MIDI tracks, the MIDI notes disappear because there's no, so if I jump through each of the tracks, right, it's just selecting each of the MIDI track. I mean, nothing really unusual here. If you hold Control, you can now select 2. So if I select violin 1 and viola, you'll see violin 1, which is my focus track, and then the second track I chose, I hold Control and push the second track, it's going to show that as a ghost underneath. So it's not active, it's just showing the ghost, which is really cool when you want to kind of follow along with what you've previously written, for instance. So I can see in this viola lines, I've got these kind of notes down here, they're ghosted. So I might want to copy them by just kind of doing a violin directly over the top of it, as an example, right? You can have as many ghosts as you like. If I bring in everything, see, it adds them all as ghosts, and it changes depending on, like if I come to the viola and I'll change the MIDI channel to something like there, so it's purple. So I'll come back to strings 1, now check viola, you'll see it's oh, that's probably a bad color to choose, a bit hard to see, but it's ghosted in purple. So whatever color that the MIDI channel has been assigned, that's probably a bit easy to see. So viola I've made yellow, which is channel 3. If I come back to violin 1 and now Control select viola, you'll see it's in yellow, right? So you can kind of set this up so the colors kind of poke out, and it's a bit easier. And when you're composing, I'm sure you can understand how kind of handy this is to use. And you can swap and change in between tracks to make them the focus track. You can copy and paste in between, you can group change, you can change, for instance, down here in the envelope editor. I'm currently looking at velocity, there's little pegs of velocity, but if I come up to, for instance, I want to be in, say, not bank, I want to be in mod wheel, which is channel 1. So if I did mod wheel in here, for instance, I recorded it in, I can now either apply it or copy it to each of the tracks inside the MIDI manager here. You can then apply CC across all the tracks. Anything you can expect to do, you know, it's right there to be done. It's a really, really neat system. Again, not super unique to Reaper. It just works very, very well in Reaper. So understanding how the MIDI track manager works and how the normal track manager works have been really incidental to my kind of being super familiar with the software. I use these two little managers all, you know, constantly, particularly the MIDI manager, right? It's such a neat little system. So that's the two managers. Now the final thing, the final thing I wanted to talk about was the tracks, the track notes. Now I'm a big note taker. I like writing down stuff all the time, and instead of having to write it down on a piece of paper or use a notepad or something to the computer, Reaper has fantastic note collections systems built into it. And this is this little box up here, and again this usually floats, but I have this docked up here because, you know, it's obviously right at the top of my project and I like it right here. And if you'll see, this little bar drop down, you can change the type of notes you're looking at, right? So I'll come down to global. Global notes are notes here which come across every single project. Anytime I start a new project, anything I do, it always has the global notes. So global notes to me are really reminders about what my buttons do here on my Tartarus. This is my controller. I'm thinking about doing a video because this is a really, really handy, like I hate having keyboards here. I do have a keyboard way over here in case I actually need to write something, but But I just like this thing. But it's also, sometimes it's hard to remember what the buttons do, and you know, I have shift, you know, all sorts of kind of weird kind of combinations, right? So this global notes helps me keep track if I forget, oh, where was that command? It's there, right? So that's just a nice little thing. Track notes, if you change it to track notes, that is a unique note for the track that's selected. So let's still got violin ones here. Now I need my keyboard because I'm going to write something. So I'm going to write track 1, V1 is rubbish. Okay, so that is now a note that I've made about track 1. So if I now choose track 2 here, you see that track note is gone because it's referring to this track up here. Okay, pretty cool. You've also got item notes. Now item are these things over here. So if I stick that item and I change this to item notes, same thing. This item is garbage. So that's applied to this item. You'll see there's a little tiny kind of a speech bubble appeared on it. That means there's obviously a note. So if I choose another item, there's no note. This one has a note. This is really, really cool for doing things like lyrics. Like if you start let's put a new insert an empty item. This is empty, just a little block of thing I've just added. You double click it and now I can add custom notes, lyrics, stuff, right, in there, completely spelled correctly, and you'll see it pops up here as words, right? So really cool way of doing lyrics, really cool way just doing little reminders to yourself, you know, oh, I've got to fix this track. You know, maybe I'll change the color of it, track colors, change it to a random color. There we go. So this, you know, it's just like a little sticky note, I guess, per track, and you can move this around because it's just a block. So that's an empty block as opposed to a MIDI block, as opposed to a video, as opposed to an audio. So you can't add custom notes like this onto a MIDI. It only adds it as a MIDI note. Hope I'm making sense here. Whereas if you start an empty item, so insert, not MIDI, not that, an empty item, that one there, that can display the custom lyrics right there, which is quite neat sometimes, you know. So getting back to the track notes here, so that's the item notes. Then we have project notes. Obviously this is unique to this entire project. So things I want to remember about the whole project. And extra project notes just means more. So you can have double project notes. So very, very, very cool. Like I said, I'm a massive note taker. I love my colors. I love keeping track of everything that's going on. This is the note manager, I'm going to call it. Note manager up here. This is the track manager. Very, very handy thing. And then we have, if we open a MIDI track, we have the MIDI manager. Again, it's only floating, this only here because this is where I put it. You can put these anywhere you like. I just like it sitting, it's docked over here. It's kind of nice and out of the way. Again, these ones are docked up here because I like them here. Put them down there if you prefer, put them anywhere you want. Reaper's great like that. So there we go. A couple of little kind of handy features of Reaper. Again, completely not unique to Reaper, but as a whole, they work so beautifully well, and it's so simple to use and nice, and kind of looks to me like part of the work, the layout and stuff, and it just adds to the whole vibe of how Reaper is so efficient and so nice to use. And so yeah, that's it. I've got some more kind of tricks coming up soon too, so make sure you subscribe and like, and chuck me some questions down below. Happy to answer anything you have to talk about, specifically Reaper or composing or theatre music or anything you want to talk about. New Zealand, I live in New Zealand, alright, I'm happy to talk about New Zealand. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we shall see you in the next video. Take care, bye.